Welcome to the Whole Pack, where we challenge black and white thinking and holistic pet care and dive into the controversial topics everyone's thinking about but nobody's saying out loud. I'm Sunny Gandera.
And I'm Melissa Sherman, and we are two holistic pet health practitioners here to prove that holistic care can include critical thinking, self-care, and yes, even Western medicine when needed. This is a judgment-free community we wish we'd had when we started our journey. Hi, Sunny. We are back, and we're going to talk about a great topic today, money mindset. It is supercharged. I love talking about it because it's something that I think a lot of us lack confidence in, especially in the caregiver space, the service industry. We're doing something that we love doing. It's natural to feel like, how do I charge for this? Especially if it's new to you, right? Like, how do you go from this is what I do as a hobby to this is what I do professionally? This is how I pay my bills. This is how I live.
Yeah.
We have a lot to say about it. So what do you got, Sunny?
Yeah, riffing off of what you said, there's something about working with animals, about working in healing and in care that makes us feel like we shouldn't also want to get paid well for it. Not just paid, but paid well for it. Like wanting to help, wanting to make money are somehow opposites when they're not. You can't help anyone if you're broke, right? I mean, because then you're just busy working on yourself. So I think a lot of us, though, came into this field because we are givers. We're nurturers. We feel things really deeply. And somewhere along the way, we absorb the idea that being of service means being broke.
Yeah.
And that if you really care, you shouldn't care about money, right? That's a trap. Oh my gosh, no, I don't care about money. I just want to help animals. And so I did a lot of money mindset work in my previous career. So this is one of my favorite topics, and especially because I was a health coach for humans, and the same thing happened there. Practitioners were really afraid to charge, oh, that's too much, we're in this for the benefit of humanity or whatever. And that's great. But I followed one money mindset mentor of mine, that Denise Duffield Thomas, and she calls this the classic combination, like undercharging and over delivering. We talked about that actually in episode 7 a little bit, because most of us do both.
Yeah.
We price too low, and then we give way more than we charged for. I actually just did that last week myself. And then we wonder why we're exhausted, right? Or oh my gosh, that was so easy, I can't charge X amount for that. Well, you are in the exact field you're supposed to be if it's easy for you, because what's easy for you isn't easy for someone else. So they're willing to pay for something that they don't know, but it comes easy to you. You shouldn't feel guilty, like, oh my gosh, I can't charge because it took me an hour and I didn't really have to do much, because that is valuable to someone else. And that may sound terrible, but it's not, because you have examples of that all over the place.
Yeah. So when you compare it to, people in other service industries, so if you start thinking of, people that work at salons, plumbers, I mean, do we question their prices? For the most part, if they're doing a good job, they're skilled at what they do. We do not want to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to them for a specific service. We know they're going to deliver something. So then why do we feel guilty, though? If you look at it that way, people do pay for other services and they don't question it.
Yeah, it's all in your head, because it's like, oh, I just want to help the animals, or it's not about the money for me. I mean, those can be both true, but you can also still charge what your work is worth, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing, is that, earning more money isn't selfish or greedy. It's actually, something that brings the economy into balance. I mean, I think about that a lot, actually, especially as women in caregiving industry. We've been conditioned to undervalue ourselves for a long time. But the truth is, if you burn out because you can't pay your bills, you're not helping anyone, right? The animals lose, the clients lose, you lose. And another thing I hear often is like, oh, that they can't afford that. How do you know? Like, it's none of your business. I mean, and sometimes it's like the price, it's not about the price. it's about how you communicate the value of your offerings. And sometimes I think about, it's about the transformation, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit down the line in the podcast, but it's about how you position, how you think about yourself and your worth. And you said something right before we started. It's like, I've invested a lot of money in my education. I've spent countless hours. I've busted my, you know, what. That is what you're charging for. You're not charging for 1 hour of your time. You're charging for your expertise, what you can bring into someone else's, world, if you will, and help their animals. That's how you have to think about it. So there's a lot of, issues that we have, all of us, I think,
Yeah.
because we were just conditioned to think about it that way.
And you're saving them time too. You're saving them the time to research.
Right.
That's part of something that we're doing. If we're talking about wellness, it's something where you've done the studies or you are doing the research, you're contacting people, and that is on behalf of them. That's what they're paying you to do. So you're giving them time back. So that's also part of it. So if you think of it more as like reciprocity, where's that even exchange? How does that look? How does that feel? Like if you put down, so like when I came up with my pricing, that was something that I had to do, is kind of write down the numbers. I'm not sure if everybody has to do this. For me, I had to write it down. I had to look at it. I had to think about, how do I feel if I do this and this is how much I'm charging? Do I feel good about it? Do I feel depleted? And that's the thing, like, so for me, my charges are a little different, whether it's an animal communication or it's wellness coaching, and people don't necessarily understand that. And the wellness is because there's a lot that goes into that before that session and after that session that they're not seeing, where like an animal communication is, yes, I open up the space, I invite the animal in beforehand when I meet with them, but it's not like hours of research or hours of putting together a plan. So charging what you're worth for your different services too is really important, because when I was charging the same thing for wellness and animal communication, I was dreading the wellness because I was feeling depleted after doing that. Like, here I just spent 6 hours on this, but I got
Yeah.
the same as what I charge for 1 hour. And it's like, okay, I have to do something here because I want to be lit up about this still. So
Right.
that's the important part, right?
Absolutely. And so undercharging, like that's how it shows up sometimes, when I first started doing consultations, and I see so many other people doing that. And this was in my previous career. It's like looked around at what everyone else was charging in the space, because I was like, I'm new to this industry. And then I priced myself just below that. I thought I was being smart, competitive, but then I read something, and that's kind of shocked me out of it. Is like, you're basing your net worth on someone else's self-worth. And that was like,
Wow.
wow, because it's like you said, you have to feel comfortable. Like, do I feel lit up about this? Yes. Now I'm really excited. It was like, ugh, gosh, another consultation. That's how you burn out, right? Or there could be something like, oh God, no, there's no way in the world I can charge that. This feels like I'm robbing, someone, right? So you have to find that sweet spot of like, I'm super excited about this. Maybe it's a little bit too high, but then when someone pays it, you're like, yes.
Yeah.
So when you price yourself based on what everyone else is charging, you're basically inheriting their money mindset too, or their money blocks, as I call them, right? Their insecurities, their stories about what's too much. So you can't compare yourself to other people. And here's the real kicker, right? So when you undercharge, you often attract clients who don't value what you do. They ghost you. They don't follow through. They haggle. Then you end up resenting the work that you got into because you loved it in the first place. So I always think about that. It's really about your self-worth, but it's also, you are worth it. And someone, that has paid for something of your services, it means that they have valued what you have to offer, and you have to think about that.
Yeah.
Another thing is overgiving. And we spoke a little bit about that previous too, but that's one sneaky, because it looks like generosity, right? It looks like, oh, I'm going that extra mile. But if you're constantly throwing in free follow-ups and staying on calls longer than you planned, or building out custom protocols you didn't charge for, That's not generosity, right? That's a boundary issue
Yeah.
that you have. So you have to think about that. I've done it. I've given away hours of work because I felt guilty charging for my time. And then I was exhausted and resentful and not actually showing up as my best self because, you know, the client, or actually I wasn't showing up for the clients who did pay me fairly. Now, how's that fair to them,
It's
right?
not, yeah.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of a time that I was giving, I was trying to get the word out there about my energy healing sessions. So the way I was doing that is if you booked an animal communication, I was giving a free like bonus energy healing. I thought that was great. I noticed that people just didn't really care about the energy session. They also weren't paying attention. Like there was no feedback. There was no, it was just kind of like I was still doing the energy session. I was still putting that time into it. I was putting the love and care into it. And it's not something they really wanted. So here I'm giving this service away and it was
Mm,
depleting me. So,
mm,
also looking at that too is if you're trying to promote something, a new service or a different service that maybe people aren't aware that you offer, still offer it at a price that feels fair for you. And people will sign up for that. Even if it's at a discounted than what you want to pay or you want people to pay in the future, it's still like they're going through the motions. You know, there
mm.
was something someone said this to me and I didn't necessarily believe it until I saw it happen was with animal communication, like the healing starts happening when they book the session. So if you're jumping through hoops and you're chasing people to book that session, it's a different kind of intuitive session that you're having. When they make that commitment, and that's really what it is, they've committed to that change, they've opened themselves up to what could happen is
Yeah.
different than if I am chasing someone to like, let me book that for you. Let me do this for you. Let me do all that for you. So, that also changed when I set it up. So like people have to book themselves. They pay when they book. It really
Mm.
changed a lot of there was that commitment. They really wanted this. They were ready for that change, right? Like that's the reciprocity too, right?
Yeah,
They've
absolutely.
paid for that reciprocity of, okay, I'm committing to this. Now let's work together.
Yeah, they have to have a stake in the game, right? Like, because otherwise, it's like if everything's free, like you can think about all the free things you've signed up for. Is there pressure to show up? Or if you've even like paid a very low price, like, I'll get to it. There is no commitment. And, when that happens, you don't get results for the client, and then you don't get good reviews because they're not following through. So it's a really vicious cycle. And another thing is, financial stress and that resentment that pops up. So if you undercharge and overgive, like we talked about, you end up in this cycle where you're working all the time, but you're never getting ahead financially. Does that sound familiar? And then that's why many people are, I can't make this work. I've got to go back to my corporate job because you didn't value yourself enough to charge XYZ. And that stress that you're feeling is leaking into everything, your sessions, your energy, your health. I mean, we start to like go to McDonald's. I mean, I've started something now where I'm like, I need to sort of start prioritizing my own health. I'm creating these like 5-course meals for my dogs. And then I'm sitting here like, oh, whatever is available, I'll eat. Like I think a
Yes.
lot of practitioners, uh, we are spending so much money on our dog's health and food, right? And then we are like left with nothing ourselves. So like basically that's also a kind of a money mindset thing because, we should charge enough. And like you said, write down a number. Like what does it take for me to have a viable business, like where I can live off of it, right?
Right.
So, you have to think about how it really is not serving anyone because you are in this holy state of, no, I'm just doing it I'll just do it, work for free. Nobody works for free. Nobody
Right.
expects you to work for free. That's just something you've told yourself, over and over.
Right.
So, yeah.
And if you're in a place where your business is stable, money's coming in, maybe you have a surplus and you feel like you want to give back, there's always an opportunity to do scholarships or sliding scales and still having those people kind of go through the motions, the same motions of I'm going to book with you, I'm going to apply for the scholarship. I mean, you don't have to be like crazy about it, but if you want to be able to give back to people who maybe can't afford your services, because that's something I've heard too, right? Like where practitioners are like, I can't afford my own services, which is true for a lot of people, right? Like, But that doesn't mean that you should undervalue yourself. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't charge what you're worth. Like doctors, lawyers, do you think they're coming out of school and saying like, well, I just went through all of that, but like I'm not going to charge that because so and
Yeah.
so they can't pay that. They still charge what they're worth. They're still doing that. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I look at it as like the more I can be financially sound, the more I can help other people.
yeah.
Like when I'm at a very comfortable place, I can now donate, I can give to charities, I can do all these things, feel good things. But I first, it's like, when you're in an airplane, you put the mask on yourself first and then help others.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. So I think that, the shifting for me happened, when I was thinking about, pricing, sustainability. It's not greed, right? Like I have to price a certain thing so I can continue offering my services. So pricing isn't it's not about what you deserve, right? It's about what allows you to keep doing your work.
Right.
And that's just the bottom line. So when you price, and that's what I'm all about, it's like when you price sustainably, you can see fewer clients. You don't have to see 20 clients a day, and you can give them better care. You can really show up and invest in continuing education. You can take time off when you need. We all need that, right?
Right.
And you can be fully present. And that's not greedy. That's actually being responsible.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm,
And
mm.
both of us came from different backgrounds. I had a corporate job for over 20 years. So it was quote unquote stable. I had, and what is stable? Because I will tell you, probably the last 15 years, from 2008 on, I was in a position, no matter which company I was working for, every Monday, 3 Mondays out of the month, they would be doing layoffs. Every Monday I would go
Oh,
in sick. Are they going to lay me off? Because back then they didn't email you before you got there. So you would find out once you got there. They like to do it on Mondays. That's not stability. There's like a false sense of security. Like I have
yeah.
insurance and I have a corporate job and I go to an office and all those beliefs that we had of what stability looks like, what a good living looks like, what finances look like. So to take from that box and now you're going into your own box and like how do I charge? How do I do this? Like that transition was a little challenging for me because there was no steady paycheck. So there's kind of
Right.
this ebb and flow of clients and income. It's not steady, maybe, but you have different streams of income. It's not just that one. That's the
Yeah.
difference, right? Like the corporate job is generally speaking, people just have that one income. So when it's gone, that's really scary. So, like, as entrepreneurs, we can have different streams of income that support us through those ebbs and flows. It gives us more flexibility. So, again, that's that mindset. That's about saying, okay, I learned all these things when I was younger, but these are not really, that wasn't stable. I wasn't happy. Those are not truths. That's not a sign of success.
Right.
You believe that this is going to work and keep pushing and believe in yourself. Charge what you're worth.
Yeah, and then you have to get you raise your vibration to that level of like knowing that you have things to offer. Like if you're like constantly in fear and you're like I'm not worthy, then you're going to attract all of those opportunities, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about that too, and that's really difficult when you're up against the wall. Trust me, I've been there. So I wanted to just quickly share like how humbling my story is because when my first career when I first got out of college was I was a record label executive for 10 years and I was working in New York City. I was making six figures, which back then was quite a bit of money, and I was flying first class and um, staying in five-star hotels. And then I went to the food world. I got educated as a chef, and I went from that to making $10 an hour, working 16 hours, standing on my feet. Now, talk about humbling, and talk about how that money stories came over. But then you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is really what I want to do. And I'm still very passionate about food. I always will be. But it was like knowing that I could make six figures before, I can make it again. I showed to myself I could do it. People trusted me, and I was, responsible for multi-million dollar budgets. I can do it. But when you're working for yourself, you have to take that self-worth is so much more important because it's not validated by someone else. you have to just kind of believe that, I'm meant to be here and this is what I'm meant to do. And that is really, really, that's tough. So I'm not sitting here saying money mindset, oh, it's no big deal, like just think you're great and you're going to make a ton of money. It's something you have to work on every single day, just like, your fitness level, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and believe you have to believe in yourself, and you have to, Sunny, I think it was you that told me to do this, like to write down my why. And then on days that I was like really doubting myself, or like saying, okay, money's not coming in, and then getting into that panic and then going to the scarcity, which is a whole thing to unwind, right? Like
Mm.
you were the one that told me to write it down, go back to
Mm.
it, remind yourself the why, pull yourself out of that panic and scarcity, because the scarcity is where we start making those bad decisions. That's where we start giving
Yeah.
half off of our services, and then running ourselves into the ground because we can't pay our bills, and we don't have any time because now we're charging half of what we were charging. So like as soon as you start to let the fear fuel you, it's over, right? That
It's
is,
over.
then you have to unwind yourself. You have to break that cycle. So when you feel
Yeah,
it creeping
absolutely.
up, it is. Remind yourself of the why. So I'm going to give you Sunny's advice. And if you haven't done that, why did you get into this? Why did you make this change? And why are you working with animals? What is your why? We would love you to
Mm.
share the why, but like have it for yourself too, because that does help me pull myself out of it so I don't spiral into scarcity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, good thinking. And I think I want to invite everyone to, instead of waking up in the morning thinking, oh my God, I've got to get another client today, I have to make money so I can pay this bill, ask yourself this question instead: how can I be of service?
Mm,
Doesn't that feel better? Because that again attaches yourself to your why, right?
it does.
Because it's like if you're like stressing out, oh my God, I made to make money, oh my God, then you're not going to attract anyone. They're going to be like, who's this freaky, like stressful person, right? So I know that's very challenging, but what is your option, right? Like you have to attract the right energy so that you can do what you're supposed to do. And that is how most of us get, bogged down, because it is also society, right? Like you're supposed to have this and that, and everyone else is so successful and you're just here like, what is she doing starting a new, I mean, I started this when I'm in my early 50s, right?
Yeah.
So people are like, what is she doing? And my family doesn't understand what I do because I change career all the time because I just follow my heart. But the thing is, we have to stop listening to the outside. And I think that one of the topics is also about, the nervous system. We talk a lot about that in animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was on our list of things to discuss that maybe people don't understand is that, when you're financially stressed, your nervous system is in survival mode, right? And it affects so much. The cortisol is high, you're reactive, you're not thinking clearly. How are you supposed to like hold space for a client who's like, for me, whose dog has cancer, right? Like I specialize in cancer, or create like a really great nutrition protocol. It's really hard to do your best work when your body is screaming at you that you're not safe, and that's what the nervous system is saying. So taking care of your finances, knowing your worth, is taking care of your nervous system. It's not separate from the work. It's really like foundational to it. So that's something to think about too, because be kind to your body, be kind to yourself so that you have something to offer,
Yeah.
to others.
Because slipping it, like what you're talking about, the energy of it is when you slip into that desperation, like you said, like it's going to it's going to scare away people that are your ideal client, that, you know, and then attract the wrong ones. And everything, all your work, everything that you do is going to have that, like, it's almost like pinging desperation. Like
Mm.
people can sense that, like, why is this feel weird? Like they may not know exactly why the messaging feels a little off, but it's that, right? Like you're off, your energy is off, you're in scarcity, your vibration is kind of like saying, ah. So
Yeah.
that's really important. And then it affects your own animals too.
Mm.
If your nervous system is not regulated, your
Yeah.
household can't be either.
And then you're attracting those clients who just want more. They paid nothing, but now they
Yeah,
want the world, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
that is very true. I'm sure all of you who are listening practitioners can relate to that. The people, my best clients are the ones that pay the most, and they don't even email me. Like they're just like, nope, we're good. I was like, oh my gosh. And then you have the ones that are like hackling you, like, oh, is it really that much? And they're like, okay, I'll just take it on. And then they email you like at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, like
Yeah.
so you have to really like, sort of raise your vibration, think about who is your ideal client and price accordingly. And don't be afraid to do that. Because, if you're in, and the thing is, I also think about, when you're helping more if you want to help many people or many pets, you have to stay in business,
Yeah.
right? If you want to help more animals, if you burn out in 2 years, say, because you couldn't pay your mortgage or your rent, you're not helping anyone, right? And when
Exactly.
you charge more, everyone wins. I mean, you win because you're sustainable. The animals win because they're getting the best version of you. Your clients win because they're working with someone who's energetic and not depleted and just excited. So to me, staying in business is an act of service, and that requires you to charge accordingly because it's not cheap out there today. That's for
Right.
sure.
Right. And
Yeah.
just, for me it's really just I do the reciprocity conversations with myself where I just want to feel like they're getting so, I'm not saying to charge like a bazillion dollars, right? But like
Mm.
you want to make sure that it feels like an equal exchange because then you won't feel like, oh, I'm charging too much because you really
Mm.
are valuing your work, you're valuing what you offer, and you feel that it is an even exchange. So I think that for me, that's like the most important part to check in. Like if I start to feel like, well, this is getting harder, prices of everything are going up, do I raise my prices or not? You go back to that
Right.
reciprocity and say, where's the equal exchange and how does this feel?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see so many talented practitioners who feel guilty about raising their prices,
Yeah.
right? They think that if they charge more, they lose clients, right? Or they won't be accessible, or people will think they're in it for the wrong reasons, as we talked about in the beginning. And it's just, as I said, the clients who value work, they'll pay for it. And the ones who won't, they were never going to follow through anywhere. They weren't supposed to be with, in your practice. And undercharging doesn't make you more accessible. It just makes you exhausted.
Exactly.
you know? Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to dive into on money mindset, and it's an uncomfortable topic because nobody's supposed to talk about money, right? But you have to talk about money.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid. Like, what do you charge? Just like knowing, like, where's my industry at? Because
Yeah.
now we're not supposed to. Oh, well, that's secret. Obviously, we usually do share what we charge, and sometimes it's on our websites, but. I just encourage more people to don't talk about money as that sort of negative friend. Like, ugh, like what if you talk to your best friend like you talk about money?
Yeah.
They wouldn't want to be near you. So why should money stick to you if you're like, oh my God, money is terrible. Money causes this and money don't grow on trees. You have all these like things people say about money and it's all negative.
Yeah.
So why on earth would money show up in your life?
Exactly. So healing those wounds too is really important. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of workshops out there and stuff, but I mean, if you want resources, reach out to me too. But there's a lot of stuff out there to heal those beliefs because that is a lot of us developed these things from childhood, whether it was the lifestyle that your household had, the beliefs of your parents, the beliefs of your family, whether it was good or
Mm,
bad about money. A lot of us are carrying that into adulthood, and now we have our own businesses, and whether it's guilt or fear or people with money are bad people, whatever those beliefs are. So that holds you back from being successful because if you make a lot of money, then you're a bad person. So what
right.
are all those beliefs that you have? Yeah, this is a very layered topic, right? Like there's so much to it because money, it's taboo. It's like
No,
taboo.
yeah.
Unless you're a billionaire, it is taboo in our culture, which is bizarre because all of us need it for everything. So to be able to have
Everything.
conversations about what it is, what feels good about it, what feels bad about it. I mean, talk to your friends, talk to other people about it.
It's a huge topic you just brought up, and a very important one is like how you were raised and what you heard your parents talk about money. Like, how did they talk about money, right? Was it easy? Was it not a big deal? Or was it like, oh, So that's something to work through as well. Like you were just unconsciously, you adopted those beliefs and now you're, basically implementing them in your grown up life. But also, I invite you to start think about money. Like I felt funny when I said I love money because oh my God, she's like such a material bi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like just invite more positive things because money isn't anything. It's just pieces of paper. Don't give it any power. It's basically, I just think of money as just a means of ways to do something that I want to do. And just don't give it so much power. Don't put it up on that pedestal. We talked about not putting people on a pedestal. Don't put money on a pedestal because money can't do anything without us.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like paper laying there.
And don't limit
So,
yourself either. There's so many people that I hear saying stuff like, I don't need too much money. I only need enough money to live. Well, like, that's what you're going to get. And then you're going to wonder why you're
right?
struggling all the time because you only have just enough to live. But, like, okay.
Yeah, that drives
So
me
what does it
crazy,
look
that one.
like if you
Yeah.
become so filthy rich you don't even know what to do with all that money? We're service people. We're probably going to give it back to people, right? Maybe have more
Yeah.
scholarships, give it to shelters. Like, if you are abundant in money, that is not a problem. You'll have a
No.
great life. And if you feel like you have too much money, you can give it away. You can give it to causes that mean something to you. So aim high,
Yeah.
really have that relationship with money where you're like, what would it feel like if I had too much money? Like, don't just enough
Yeah.
yourself because you're limiting yourself to only have enough where you're still, I can't go on vacations. I want to go on vacations. Well, you don't need that to live. So
Right.
what does it feel like? And I would love it if people would say like, I did this for a month and this started happening, because that's really what changed it for me is having this relationship of what would it feel like? What would it feel like if I had a private jet? Like that feels
Yeah.
crazy, but like, what would it feel like if I had enough money to do whatever I want whenever I want to do it?
Yeah.
Live like
And
that.
I want to say one thing that came up as you were talking about that is that, one of my business coaches back in the day, who's actually very wealthy and, does very well for herself, makes like 7 figures, whatever. And then she's like, you know what? I just realized I'm talking to you guys about money mindset, don't have money blocks. And she's like, I was in Nice or Cannes or whatever, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at these like $500 million yachts out there. I was like, oh my God, that's not, and I caught myself, that's not for me. And I'm thinking to myself, why not? Why isn't it for me? If that's what you want, I'm not necessarily interested in buying a $500 million yacht. But the point is that, someone was like, how much money would you love to make? So someone said $10,000 a month. That would be awesome. So what if you put another zero behind it? And they're like, shocked. Now that's something to work towards, right? It's not like you're saying, I just want enough to pay my bills and go on vacation once a year. Why are you selling yourself short? Like, I mean, imagine how much you can help animals if you're making so much money that you're like, I don't need that, but I can actually, like you said, give to sanctuaries. I can do all these things and make me feel really good and I'm contributing to society. What if we could talk about money that way instead of like, oh, she's money obsessed. She's so materialistic.
Yeah.
So we are killing ourselves and our industry, undervaluing ourselves. I'm very passionate about this topic. I've taught on it before, and I would love to hear from you guys. What is your biggest money block? What is your money mindset? What's holding you back? What is your belief about money? What is a negative belief about money that you grew up listening to all the time? And does that now manifest in your grown up life? I would love to hear it, right? We would love to have you guys comment, write us, you know where to find us on the whole pack and on social media, on Substack. And we also, of course, have our own channels. Not Your Average Dog Health Coach is me, and Melissa is the Calming Creek. And so we'd love to continue this discussion because we could probably go on and on about it. And am I just like babbling away now?
I know. I feel like this could be like a to be continued. Maybe we'll have a live on Substack and invite our listeners to come in and like say what's going on with them, and we can all work together to kind of get through some of these blocks, because this is something that does hold a lot of people back. Don't let it.
Right.
Just start practicing small with those little like, what if. I love, Sunny, the one that you said, adding a zero to what Because imagine,
possible.
imagine
Yeah.
what that would feel like, and wake up in the morning and say, wow, that would feel awesome. And like,
Right?
what
Talk
if
about
I could donate
inspiring.
$1 million to my favorite sanctuary? How would that change their lives? All the animals that are there. How many more animals could it help? So don't think of yourself as greedy. Really think of it as there's so much money in the world. What if
Yes,
you had more of it? Yeah,
unlimited amounts of it just it's flowing constantly.
right.
And there's enough for all of us. And, I just want to leave with this, that, the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic is because I want to help more animals. And the wealthier you are and happier and more relaxed you are, the more you can help them. Don't turn it around and be some victim that is supposed to suffer because you are in a caregiving industry. We
Yeah.
should be thriving and inviting that into our life just like everybody else. So leave you with that. Anything else you want to add, Melissa, before
Think
we
you covered it. I love it.
thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope you found this episode useful and interesting. We'd love to hear your feedback. And we have another juicy topic next week. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Thank you.
Before we go, we want to remind you that the information shared on the whole pack is for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace veterinary medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your veterinarian before making any changes to your pet's diet, supplements, or healthcare routine. Every animal is unique, and what works for one may not be appropriate for another. We're here to empower you with knowledge, but your vet is your partner in your pet's individual care.